Welcome back to our podcast. This time, our host Larisa Munteanu is joined by Thammapas Chanpanich, lawyer and data protection expert at Tilleke Gibbins based in Bangkok, Thailand. Larisa and Thammapas cover their experience of the recent AIJA conference and awards in Singapore. They discuss what it takes and what it's like to gain IAPP's CIPP qualification, and then take a deeper look into Thailand's Personal Data Protection Act and consider the importance and influence of the GDPR over more recent international laws. This is the JSIG Privacy Deep-Dive.
Hello, Thammapas, and welcome to our podcast. I'm very happy to see you again, and thank you for accepting our invitation. For those being new here, I am Larisa Munteanu. I am the data protection lawyer and the deputy DPO for JS Information Governance Limited. Now, Thammapas, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on this podcast, and please let me introduce myself. My name is Thammapas Chanpanich, or you can call me Patuan. That's my nickname. Okay. And I I am a lawyer in Tilleke Gibbins International Limited, based in Thailand. And we are an international law firm, and my area of expertise definitely include data protection, also technology and media and insurance law. So I have been working here with Tilleke Gibbins for about 4 years, and have been working on personal data protection law since it's a draft law in Thailand back then in 2018. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that's my short intro. Yeah.
Yeah, we have many things in common then, both firms with worldwide activity and data protection focused. That's great. So me and Patuan met in Singapore for the annual Congress of AIJA in August. So I think you were one of the first persons that I met in Singapore, and the group that I first took a photo with. So for me, you're right now a very special guest. Can you tell us what made you attend this Congress, and was there a particular reason why you were there, or were you just sent there, let's say, by your company?
Yeah, so actually this event, the AIJA event in Singapore was my first event attending arranged by the AIJA. And actually, it's our first time for our firm to send representative to the AIJA events as well. I think I found the information about this event, and I found that it is quite interesting for our firm and for me, because I understand that I believe that in this event I can meet a lot of young lawyers came from across the world, and we can share our experience and expertise or everything together in that event. So I and my firm decided to send me and my colleagues just to attend the AIJA event, and that's where we met.
Yeah. Well, for me, my company didn't even know about AIJA, and honestly, neither did I. I was invited basically by AIJA because I took part in the competition for the Best International Future Lawyer Award, and I was just announced that I was the winner, and they invited me to attend the Congress. So it was, again, making the whole experience much more unique than it already was anyway. So may I ask you, if you were to describe the whole experience in one word, what would it be?
I would say impressive. This is because my first time, and I found the event was well arranged. There are a lot of academic sessions provided by experienced lawyer from different area of expertise like M&A, technology, data protection, IP, and etc. And also, apart from the academic event, there are a lot of networking sessions as well, right? And I think that like the relationship among the AIJA member and participant is quite strong. Like after the event, we still communicate and keep in touch. I also like have some lawyer that I met in the event and refer some work to me and still keep in touch on like social media, something like that. So I think the relationship is quite strong and it's quite impressive.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. For me, I think the right word would be gratitude for the reasons previously described, because if AIJA didn't want me to be there, I wouldn't be there. So I'm truly grateful, happy, honored, everything that they chose me to be there. And honestly, that was the most important, the most special part to me, that I felt somehow recognized, I felt valued, and the appreciation coming from a global network of wonderful lawyers. Well, that truly means something to me. And the moment when I came back from the stage at the gala dinner was just unforgettable, because it was you and so many lawyers there around my table and texting me and congratulating me, and both, known and unknown faces. And that's not something that I get to live every day. Absolutely.
Yes. And your speech that night is also like very impressive as well. When you get the like winner. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So again, about the Congress, I think this whole Congress was of very much interest to both of us as data protection lawyers, because the subject was, the future of the legal profession. So although there were not many or none, maybe, seminars related specifically to data protection, the topic of future of the legal profession, I think that's closely related to data protection and what we do on a daily basis. Do you think that there was something mentioned, or maybe a whole seminar that helped you gain more insight into other fields of law that are connected to data protection, or even develop more knowledge in data protection?
I think, like as you mentioned, that the session in the seminar is not kind of like specifically related to the personal data but protection, but I think the data protection issue is still there. I mean, like every part of the law, every part of the business is all related to the personal data. And for me, I think like the most concern issue under the personal data protection law is about the cross-border transfer as well, because there are a lot of multinational business operator that they use personal data in their operation of their business. So when it comes to like multinational jurisdiction, definitely the cross-border transfer of the personal data is quite something that they need to take into the consideration. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes, and it's an increasingly concerning issue, let's say, and we can see many movements globally towards this direction, and having agreements, having treaties in place, trying to make these transfers as efficient as possible. And I think the Congress helped us as well gain more insight into seeing the standpoint, seeing the position of other jurisdictions. At least for me, it was interesting to see in reality how the US lawyers perceive these things, because for us Europeans, it's always that, the US lawyers are more flexible, have their own way of doing things and want to impose that. But when you get to meet that US lawyer, it's not necessarily how you perceive it from the outside. So you get to see more of how their law applies, of interpretation, and it helps us doing our job on a daily basis, again, easily, because we always need to understand the meaning of the law and not only the letter, I would say. So you told me that this experience was unique to you as well. So we have a consensus for that. And I remember from one of our conversations that you told me you passed the CIPP exam as well. So we have that in common. And I was thinking, what do you consider to be the most positive part of preparing for this exam?
So for me, the most positive part is that I can learn and like know more deeply about the concept of the personal data protection law, the GDPR specifically, and because the GDPR is also the model law of Thailand's PDPA, or Personal Data Protection Act. So, and I think like when I study the CIPP or the GDPR, I can know more about the provision of the law, the concept, also the practice and the guideline that is quite more developed than Thailand's Personal Data Protection Act. And you may have known that Thailand's Personal Data Protection Act has just become fully effective this year, like on the 1st of June. So it's quite like very, very first positive for me to know the practice of the international standard, and I can apply that concept of law, the guideline or the practice I received during the studying the CIPPE and apply to my work. And like specifically when I provide service or provide advice to my client on the personal data protection law, and particularly on the issue that Thailand is quite weak or do not have some that like strong requirement like the GDPR.
And did you find it easily to, let's say, transpose everything that you knew from Thailand's law to now European law, and to see all the guidance that the EDPB has provided, and previously Working Party 29 and the historical part? Yes, everything.
I would say that for the principle of the law, I think it's not that hard because most of the provision of Thailand PDPA is quite the same as the GDPR. So I already like know some concept, and also when I like provide service or advice to my client, I also like conduct the research and read the GDPR like from time to time. So I actually know some of them, some of the practice, some of the provision of the GDPR. But I would say that the most part that I find is difficult for me is the history part. There will be some history part about the data protection, right, under the European law, right? And I found that like because I'm in Thailand, in Asia, I find it's quite difficult for me to understand and remember all that history and something like that.
So may I ask, do you have similar guidance from the supervisory authority in Thailand with respect to data protection?
As the PDPA is quite new in Thailand as of now, and we have not yet like have that some kind of guidelines like the under the GDPR. Actually, there are some like requirement and obligation of under the under the PDPA that we still need further clarifications and guidance from the regulator, which is the Personal Data Protection Commission. And yeah, I think that the PDPC is now like working on it and try to like issue that kind of clarifications and guidelines as soon as they can, because it is now like there are a lot of questions about how to comply with the PDPA with that like lack of some clarification and requirement. Yeah, and PDPA is quite new in Thailand. Like it introduced some like new requirement and principle of the law. For example, the data subject right under in Thailand, the privacy right already there in Thailand's constitution, but they have no like the law that specifically mention the data subject right about their personal data. So this is very new in Thailand as well. So this is some kind of challenge that the business operator face, and I think the PDPC, which is the regulator, will have to like try to issue the guideline for the business operator to comply with. And I think the guideline and the principle will also follow the GDPR because this is the model law of the PDPA. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned qualifications, and that's very interesting. Could you please expand on that? Is there a standard qualification that's required in Thailand to be a DPL or a data protection lawyer, for example?
Yeah, yes, actually, yes, but as of now, there are some concept about the appointment of the DPO. Actually, the current provision of the PDPA does not like provide a full list of the qualification of the DPO. They just like provide some concept. For example, the independence concept, like the PDPO will need to be able to report directly to the executive of the data controller, and the the DPO will need not to have like some the conflict of interest with other that kind of concept still there in the PDPA, but the PDA provides some room for the PDPC to issue more qualification on for the DPO, like for example, the qualification on the language, on the resident or nationality or others like certificate, something like that have not yet been like issued by the PDPC. Yeah, but there are some draft sub regulation which will set out the qualification of the DPO, like issue for the public hearing by the PDPC. But in that draft law, I think the PDPC will like try to require the DPO to have some specific knowledge and prescribe whether or not the DPO will need to be in Thailand or they need to communicate in Thai, something like that. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, but that law has not yet like issued by the PDPC. Just the draft. Yeah.
So shall we expect that to be enforced soon?
Yeah, very soon, sure. I think it will be announced like maybe the first quarter of the next year or by the end of this year. Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing then. Maybe you know already that in the EU and in the UK, from what I noticed, there is an increasing demand to require a legal background for DPOs. So it first started as accepting people with both legal background or IT background alternatively. And right now, from what I noticed, there's a slight shift towards requiring legal background. And probably that's because of the whole chaos that's going on with international data transfer, standard contractual clauses, and inserting, those clauses that are, let's say, tricky or in favor of your client. That's something that your lawyer can definitely do. Now, of course, the IT specialist can also help you with the technical measures, with the security standards to be imposed. So there are pros and cons for both sides. Also, I think the CIPP exam has become a worldwide requirement, or at least recommended standard for DPOs. What do you think?
Yes. With the absence of the like more qualification to be prescribed by the PDPC, I noticed that like more of the companies, when they recruit the new DPO, they always like require the DPO to have the international certificate like the CIPP that we have. Also the knowledge on IT and legal. I think they are like compile like try to follow the GDPR and the business operator in Europe. Yeah. So that's why it's quite similar trend about the qualification of the DPO here in Thailand. Yeah, and definitely the legal background is always required because this is the law requirement that needs some like specific lawyer to understand or like who understand the concept and the legal requirement to be the DPO.
Yes. And in our company, it's me that's a lawyer, and it's my colleague Mark that he takes care of the technical part and security and, the technical aspects of data protection. So me and him, we work absolutely amazing in harmony. I'm saying, well, for a client, this is what the law says. This is what you need to do. And then Mark comes and says, well, this is how you do it. This is how we implement it. This is what this encryption means. So that creates that harmony that the clients need. Well, how do I comply? What do I use? And why do I need to comply with this? So I think that's the best approach, the best practice, let's say. So tell us more about the data protection law in Thailand. What do you think is the biggest challenge in Thailand right now in the industry of data protection?
Yeah, as I told you that the PDPA is quite new in Thailand, right? And some of the legal requirements are like also needs further clarification and guideline from the PDPC, the regulator. So I think the most challenging thing is that like for the business operator, the business operator always like ask the question that how to comply with the PDPA while the business operator is not in that like can go smoothly. So is it quite challenging for the business operator and actually for the lawyer as well, because the law is not like expertly provide more that clarification to you. So when I like provide advice or provide services to my client, I always do the research on the GDPR so that I can like compile the practice and the concept of the law to each specific case for the client to provide like the most efficient way and the most practical way to like both comply with the law and operate the business like smoothly. Yeah. So I think this is quite challenging. Like for example, the requirement on the data breach incident notification. Actually, the concept is that the data controller, if there is a data breach, if the data controller become aware of the data breach, the data controller may need to notify the regulator or the data subject as the case may be. But in Thailand, the current provision of the PDPA does not provide the definition of the data breach. So it's quite like, yeah, it's quite challenging for the business operator to like define and assess the accident, the incident that they may face, and they will like come to the question whether I need to notify the regulator or the data subject or something like that. This is quite challenging for the business operator.
So what is the approach you're following right now? Do you apply the GDPR's definition for data breach, or is it only practical assessment of the circumstances and on a case-by-case basis?
So in that case, previously I follow the concept of the GDPR, but recently the PDPA already issued a draft sub-regulation for about the data breach incident notification requirement for public hearing, and I find that it also follow the concept of the GDPR. So yeah. So we now using that draft sub regulation when do the assessment for like some business operator. Yeah, but yeah, when it comes to the law, we will definitely like have to comply the law.
Yeah, absolutely. And may I ask, do you know if in this draft the 72 hours time frame is maintained, or do you have a different deadline for reporting the data breach to the supervisory authority? It's the maximum allowed.
Is currently 72 hours.
Oh, so it's the same.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, the concept and everything is, I think, is the same as the GDPR now.
And what about the deadline to respond to data subject requests? For example, the data subject access request, is it still 1 month?
Based on the current provision, there is no specific deadline, just without delay. Yeah, just without delay. That word. Yeah.
Well, that's open to interpretation and to misapplication of the law, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So that's why we need further clarifications and
absolutely
the requirement from the PDPC. Yeah.
And is it possible to extend, or I suppose since the main timeline says without undue delay, there's no possibility for extension, is it?
Currently, no, but the PDPA like provides some room for the PDPC to prescribe further like criteria and exemption. So the PDPC may like provide that relaxation or some further criteria on this in the future.
Yeah, that's definitely needed. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And in the UK, on the other side of this, right now, you probably know there's a lot of dynamism in the system, let's say. So there are treaties signed. We have a new treaty, an agreement actually signed with the US. that it's basically enforcing the Cloud Act. And there were a lot of debates and discussions everywhere by the privacy professionals about that, because it's a way of sharing data between the US and the UK enforcement bodies for serious crimes. And now companies and even individuals are getting worried that it may be misused at the same time. And subsequently, that maybe this can lead to an adequacy decision or arrangement between the US and the UK. Now, that would be very interesting to follow and to see where it goes. But at the moment, we still use standard contractual clauses with transfers as the main and most frequently used mechanism for transfers to the US. What is Thailand's position on these international data transfers? What's the mechanism that's most frequently used or maybe recommended in the law, or maybe just the one that you use in general?
About the cross-border data transfer, actually, the Thailand's PDPA also adopt the same concept as the GDPR. They provide some room for actually, the law just said that the when you transfer the personal data to the destination country where it does not have the adequate personal data protection standard, you will need some mechanism to protect the personal data. And I think it is quite the same as the standard contextual code, where you have some contract that you allow the data subject to exercise their right, something like that. But the detail on the cross-border transfer requirement is still need clarifications and further requirement from the PDPC. It's just a concept that, as I mentioned, that just basically need the destination country to have adequate personal data protection standard. If not, you need to rely on further exemption like standard contextual code by binding corporate rules. Also get the consent from the data subject, something like that.
And also the whole list with codes of conduct and the rest of the mechanisms as well, right? And the adequacy arrangements are the ones that we currently know from the EU, or are they different, or how are they assessed?
That's also need the clarification from the PDPC. Yeah, there is currently no definition on what would constitute the adequate personal data protection standard. But I understand that in EU there will be the white list of the country, right? I think Thailand will also follow that way, issue the white list or how to assess that the destination country have adequate personal data protection standard. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And my last question would be, if I were to establish a business tomorrow and I choose Thailand, what do you think is or are the main things that I should consider from the data protection perspective, from appointing a DPO, everything that you can think about?
Definitely, you will need about the data flow, for the type of the personal data that you will use for the business, the purposes, where it will go to, everything, the whole process of the data flow, so that you can identify what the next step that you need to do, right? For example, whether you will need to get the consent from the data subject, or you can rely on other lawful basis, or where or when you need to provide information about the processing of the personal data, and the internal management as well, implement security measures, appropriate security measure, appoint the DPO, record the processing activities, enter into the contact with the data processor, something like that. It's quite a lot of obligation that a data controller will need to comply with. So the first thing first, I think they need to know first the data flow, so that you can identify more on the implication and the things that you need to do to comply with the law. Yeah.
So that would mean, for example, creating the data inventory or the data map?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So that's pretty much in common with what we have in the EU and in the UK. And of course, it stems from the fact that you just mentioned that the whole legislation takes after the GDPR. And I think that's something that we frequently meet in the data protection law world.
Yes,
So
I think sorry.
Yeah, go on.
So I think I think the reason behind that is that Thailand will need to meet the international standard like the GDPR. So that's why we need to like follow the GDPR in that way. Yeah.
So do you think that in 2 or 3 years from now, we should expect Thailand to be the new separate individual regime in data protection, or would it be only a similar regime that follows other countries' regimes, such as, well, maybe even EU's regime?
Oh, it is quite hard to like
No, it's just your opinion.
Yeah, but I think it's real like just follow the international standard now because it is like I said, it is quite new and
Yes.
like at this stage, I think maybe like our government or business operator will just try to comply with the international standard like the GDPR. So I think it is quite like just follow the GDPR and maybe apply some specific area or specific legal requirement for Thailand. Like if there is any unique like requirement that need that specific requirement. Yeah.
Oh, we can only appreciate the initiative of Thailand and welcome it in the whole world of legislation in the field. Thank you very much, Patuan. I don't have any further questions for you. If you want to ask me anything or if you want to continue on a specific topic.
No, I think we all always like share some experience and knowledge together. Yeah. So I'm good and thank you for having me today. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was a great experience and I was just very happy to be able to revisit those memories together with you and to find out more about Thailand's law. And we're looking forward to more updates from you about Thailand. Thank you once again.
Sure. Thank you, you too.